Hi, I'm Alex Largusa, and you're watching the FirstPres broadcast. Today we have music by the Black Excellence Band from Oakland, who started an initiative called Power 100, which helps empower young local artists and creators. We also have a conversation with small-town musician Sophia Hernandez and local thinker and economist Aaron Anderson. So sit back and stay tuned.
Hey, what's going on, small town family? My name is Clean, member of the Black Excellence Band. I'm the MC in the group, and our group also consists of Ashley, who's our keyboard player, Jayla, who's our drummer, and Kevin, who's our violinist. Now, our group is pretty dope because everybody has a different background. Like Kevin is classically trained, Jayla has a jazz background, and Ashley has a gospel background. So I think it's pretty dope that we come together and still manage to make this whole thing work. A very cohesive group. We've been working with each other for years now, so we just enjoy the time that we get to spend doing live performances, which we don't get to do a lot anymore, but that's cool. But as of right now, we just been kind of just building around virtual performances and just connecting with different organizations, sharing our stories with them. And what I mean by stories is that our music and our themes and our topics, which have been able to get us in some doors like the Black Excellence Coalition. We've been doing things that have to do with diversity and inclusion. So it's been some real great opportunities just because the type of music we make is usually centered around just like Black pride or just humanity and, human rights and just kind of living a life based in I would say morality and ethics and just trying to be a good human overall. What we're doing now is building what we call the Power 100. And the question that I was asked was like, has my dream come true with the Power 100? And I would say, yeah, it's fairly new. But we've been able to get, what about like 30 allies? I call them allies because these people who are subscribing, if you will, are a part of me being able to not only support me musically, but also being able to support change, whether it's social justice or economic justice, things like that. So we've been able to give back and give some scholarships, been able to get some business grants, donate to some organizations that have been helping out with the homeless, so different things like that. So it's always it's a win, and it's very inspiring, just the more people that we get to come in and support what we're doing. So just overall, yeah, I would say that dream has come true, and it's a lot more that we're going to be doing, and we got a long way to go. We just started in July, and we already got so many people supporting us. So hopefully you can be one of those people that join us and just come on and support the movement. Thank you.
Y'all at home, y'all can snap with us. This right here is called freedom, y'all. Pay attention to the words, see if you can relate. Here we go. Listen, now what's freedom? When you ain't gotta fight for your rights. Your skin color don't define your life. And what you choose as a religion won't determine if you make that flight. Your gender not being a factor just to get paid right. Should I say fair? Not denied that job because your hair ain't the texture or the style that they revere. Oops, my bad. Hopefully it ain't your dialect or broken language that results from your experience. Listen, see, freedom's when you benefit from the system, and your lack of finances don't let you become its victim. Khalif, I'm sorry, I hope you know your pain was not in vain. The true hero, the world you forever change. And shed light on what this place is like. Land of the free, home of the brave, how we ain't getting it right. See, it's a broken system when veterans, you forget them. And the ones who built this country, you dismiss them and convict them. That ain't freedom. Instead, I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free. Been on this road too long, but we ain't fighting alone. So we gon' reach the promised land, you'll see. Because we gotta get free, y'all. Said I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free. Been on this road too long, but we ain't fighting alone. So we gon' reach the promised land. Snap with me. Freedom, when every woman's got the right to choose. Leaving your land for better days, a simple right to move. Freedom, that's when your vote actually counts and you ain't missing education because of your bank account. Freedom, that's walking through the front door, owning your own stores. I'm talking mountain bayous, oh yes, we need more. Political power, political freedom, the right to love who you want without the fear of mistreatment. freedom. That's like walking around in any neighborhood without the thought of losing your life, cause you got on the hood. Freedom to challenge what's wrong without persecution. Exile and blacklist from our institution. We strange fruit still hanging from trees in many ways. So I'm hoping that we wake up and see that a noose to a neck, a bullet through flesh, down to the digits you receive on your check. It's all to strip away your freedom. Said I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free. Been on this road too long, but we ain't fighting alone. So we gon' reach the promised land, you'll see, because we gotta get free. I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free. Been on this road too long, but we ain't fighting alone. So we gon' reach the promised land, you'll see. Snap with us, y'all. I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free. Been on this road too long, but we ain't fighting alone. So we gon' reach the promised land, you'll see, because we gotta get free. Come on, said I just wanna be free. I just wanna be free. Been on this road too long, but we ain't fighting alone. So we gon' reach the promised land, you'll see, because we gotta get free.
KK, what do you think about the economy?
Economics is basically the scarcity or the amount of things there are. You want to buy 2 video games, but you only have enough to buy 1. If you had enough for both, then you would also probably have enough for another thing, so you have to make those decisions.
Some people don't have money and they have a little bit of money, and if they buy something and then they want another thing, and then the other thing is more expensive, they couldn't afford it.
What kind of economy do we have?
Why do economies grow? Can an economy ever get too big?
In our economy, is there a way that everyone can get what they need?
What does the Bible say about the economy?
Hey everyone, just want to welcome you this morning, and I wanted to introduce you to 2 of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and we're going to have a conversation about wealth inequality in this country specifically, but also across the globe. And originally I was thinking that someone like myself would do the interview, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought how amazing it would be for someone like Sophia, who is 13 years old and really going to ask some questions for the next generation, from the next generation, and actually keep things down to earth and not heady and all of those things. And Sophia, I specifically picked you for numerous reasons, but one of them was you write a lot of songs that I absolutely love, but 2 of my favorite songs are Untouchable and Mars. And I love essentially your cry, for lack of a better term, that we could do better as a society. Your desire not only for the environment, but also for your sort of an attack on classism across our country and in our communities is inspiring and challenging, and I think helpful to this conversation. So I knew that you would ask good questions, and it would come from a place that we need to hear, because you are, at this point, it seems, unfortunately, inheriting our world. And so ask the right questions. And with that being said, we kind of looked around for some peeps who we thought could be really helpful into this conversation. And Aaron Anderson and I have been dear friends for a long time. I just want to read who Aaron is. Aaron Anderson lives in Berkeley, California. He is an education administrator and is the editor of The Bias magazine, a publication of the Institute for Christian Socialism. He also writes occasionally on religion and politics. And I've known Aaron for about 10 years, and we have both really grown sort of in our knowledge and understanding, both theologically and economically, politically, philosophically. And I just love bouncing around ideas and thoughts and dreaming about what a better world could look like. So I am super excited to have Sophia interview you, Aaron. And so without further ado, I'm not going to talk much. I am simply going to moderate if need be. But so Sophia, take it away.
All right. So my first question was just to kind of summarize, what is wealth inequality and how do you think it's affecting our communities?
Yes, thank you. So I would say that there are a number of ways you could define wealth inequality. If you hop online to start reading about wealth inequality, you'll see lots of different definitions. You'll see mountains of research and statistics. Your eyes will probably glaze over, as mine did, preparing for this. So like maybe for our conversation, it might be helpful to talk broadly about what I would call like economic inequality. That takes into account a lot of different types of inequality, including wealth and income inequality, which are both talked about quite a bit.
Right.
I would say very simply, economic inequality is the unequal distribution of income, wealth, and opportunity among different groups in society. Now, of course, it's a fact, it's undeniable that this kind of inequality exists, especially in America. But people are divided over how serious inequality is, and even whether it's a bad thing to have so much economic inequality, right?
Right.
So maybe I could just paint a quick picture for those who are on the fence about just how unequal American society is. A couple of things that I could throw out just to help paint this picture. Over the last few years, actually, the American economy has been growing very steadily. The economy in the U.S. has never generated so much wealth. 2 years ago, in 2018, net household worth, right? So across all households in America, that worth came to $98 trillion, just, an immense amount. Eric Levitz, who writes at New York Magazine, has pointed out that if you were to spread this across evenly, all U.S. households, it would put about $298,000 in every American's pocket. So if you're from a family of four, you are a millionaire family at the very least. But I mean, that's not the case, right? I mean, this wealth is not distributed evenly by any means. At this point, the wealthiest fifth of Americans now hold over 90% of the country's total wealth. The number of billionaires has more than doubled in the last decade, all the while food stamp dependency is up 40%. Recently, the richest 400 families in the US paid an average tax rate of 23%, while the bottom half working class people paid 24%.
Yeah, I saw a video where they scaled down the population of the United States to 100 people, and they had this fact that 1% of America has 40% of the country's wealth.
Yes.
Which was pretty crazy. It's almost like half of the
Yes.
entire wealth of the country in 1%.
Right. I mean, it's truly staggering to think about. We all have the image of Bernie with his, millionaires and billionaires, right? And that's something we can laugh about along with him. But truly, these are like almost unimaginable
Yeah,
numbers
it's
to think
crazy.
about,
Actually,
right?
yeah, I read a fact a while ago that the human mind can't even grasp what the number 1 billion is.
Yes.
And it's just
Yes.
crazy that humans can have that much money.
That's right. It is
without
quite literally
being able
crazy.
to grasp the concept of it.
Yes. Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. And one more data point that links into this for us millennials, right? I mean, we're the kind of people who, for instance, the average millennial at this point will never, if this kind of pattern continues, never be able to save enough for retirement. And yet we're talking about numbers that we can't even imagine, right? That are in the bank accounts of billionaires.
Right.
So yeah, these are just some truly shocking figures, I think. You probably have heard things too about, people who can calculate how much a worker earns in a minute or an hour compared to someone like Jeff Bezos. I mean, the average for a worker is like $27 an hour, somewhere around there. And Jeff Bezos's minute rate, he makes about $149,000 each minute, right? So it's figures like these where we're just talking about astronomical forms of wealth and unbelievable forms of inequality that result from that, right? So I mean, there's a question too of like what this does to communities, right? So I have friends, Paul has friends, who we go way back with from different political backgrounds that would look at this and say, you know, this is just something that all societies have to deal with.
Yeah.
But I actually think, you know, again, there's a lot of research around what it actually does to communities. And it really does show that it's quite detrimental, both
Yeah.
to what it does for individual well-being and also communal well-being and belonging. Um, Inequality of many sorts, especially economic, you know, makes our communities more susceptible to sickness and disease, much more susceptible to social and political violence,
Yeah.
drug addiction, mental illness, obesity, clearly loss of free time and community life, imprisonment, poor well-being for our children. I think about this a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's helpful too to think about, like, this does something to our minds too, not just our bodies and our community belonging,
Definitely.
but humans actually have very strong psychological responses to inequality and hierarchy, right? So
Yeah.
we tend to confuse wealth with personal worth, which means inequality can literally shape our social perceptions, how we see the social world. And we begin to think about people in terms of like superior, inferior,
Right.
dominance, subordination. You don't have to look much further than you know, the White House to see how this begins to infect the way that we talk about our life together as Americans, right?
Yeah.
We tend to start thinking that dominance and subordination are just a natural part of our life together, based on who does and who doesn't have wealth and privilege.
Yeah. It's crazy how like the wealth of people can play into so many aspects of life and like psychology and like social life and basically like almost everything.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
And how
Absolutely.
it's like grown from like small civilizations like ancient times and like today how much it's controlling the lives of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we'll probably talk a bit later too about, you know, sort of whether things have always been this way or not, right? Like you know, there's a history behind the way that
Right.
societies have divided up wealth and who produces wealth and who steals and takes and appropriates wealth. And then there are little mini histories inside of that too, right? You could look at the last 100 years of American life, like things weren't this bad actually 40 years ago.
So my next question is, in your opinion, can you give me some examples of what the worst form of wealth disparity, wealth inequality is today in our communities?
Sure, yeah. There are a couple examples that come to mind. Let me just say, you know, COVID has really helped to illustrate just how dire the problem of inequality is.
Right.
It's in a sense shown up some of the worst parts of the way we think about our economy and democracy and race and many things, right? But so get this. So there's a report by a Swiss bank that found that billionaires actually increased their wealth by more than a quarter, so about 27% during the height of the COVID crisis. So from about April to July, the wealth of billionaires grew by a quarter. So these already huge fortunes reached a record high of about a cumulative $10.2 trillion, right? So this is what's happening while people are suffering and dying, right? Millions of people around the world lose their jobs or have to go to work and expose themselves to sickness and death. We're just struggling to get by and you know, have just a very paltry government stimulus, right? And at this point now have been told, good luck, we'll see if it happens again. That's what's going on, you know, in the midst of ordinary working people's lives. That's what's happened. Now, that's just a recent illustration, though, of what I wanted to say is the most graphic illustration, which is kind of a decades-long trend. There are a number of studies that have showed from like, I think it's 1978 to 2018, so about, you know, that's 50 years, is that right? CEO compensation grew a whopping 940%, while average worker compensation has grown about 12%. In other words, almost nothing. Now that figure is like shocking in itself. Again, we're talking about astronomical numbers, right, that are hard to think about. But it's important to actually point out too that worker productivity has actually increased in that time. We're actually working more hours. We're enduring more workplace stress. We're seeing less benefits overall. Our retirements are more and more precarious. So here we are, 40, 50 years later, and with almost nothing to show for it. So why does that gap exist, right? Is it just natural? Is it kind of like a whoops, here we are? I think for young people like us, who've grown up over the last, 25, 30 years, we see the travesty and the outrage in these numbers, but we don't always know quite what's going on behind the scenes, right? So is this just like a natural thing? But it's not. I mean, these same sort of studies show that this gap did not occur because CEOs and executives have suddenly become more productive themselves or more skilled, right? The same studies show this gap exists because they have been able to cut wages, to avoid taxes, to receive exorbitant bonuses. Again, we're talking in sometimes the millions of dollars. And they've seen increases in stock shares. That's where a lot of the money is, right? Money that poor people and working people don't have access to. So you have this new entire class of millionaires and billionaires who have fortunes that are now literally impossible to spend over even multiple lifetimes of extravagant luxury, right? What is the purpose of this kind of money? All the while people struggle with homelessness, medical bankruptcy, things like that. So to me, this is a stark illustration of where things are at.
Yeah.
The other that I think is an important thing to bring up in this moment of rebellions against racial injustice in the midst of a COVID pandemic.
Yes.
Are the disparities, the racial disparities in infections and hospitalizations and deaths among racial minorities, right? And the relationship that actually has to wealth disparity, right? There actually is a relationship to it. So just quick numbers here, right? So among American Indians, Alaskan Natives, Hispanics, and Black people, their rates of infection for COVID are nearly 3 times higher than a white person's.
Wow.
The hospitalization rate is 5 times higher for an American Indian or Alaskan Native, 4.5 times higher for Blacks and Hispanics. And the COVID death rate is 2 times higher for a Black person. Now, these are smaller numbers compared to what we're talking about from earlier, but then when you're thinking 2 times higher death rate, that is still just an unconscionable amount, right?
Yeah.
To think about a human death rate that's twice when it doesn't have to be. I think these disparities actually do tell us something, though, about economic equality. And I'll just say something here about African Americans because that's something I've done more research about. I think the history of Black life in America is partly the history of their inability to access American wealth, right?
Yeah.
So if you back up and think about, the plight of slaves in America, 250 years ago, Black folks were owned. And one of the features of being owned is you have no wealth, period, right?
Right.
You're simply a cog for pumping out wealth for white people. And most Americans would see that as a travesty.
Yeah.
Most Americans, I don't know about you guys growing up, but most Americans often have little sense of the history of Black people's integration into American life after slavery, though, right? So I know for me, growing up as a white evangelical, I was homeschooled. My sense of Black life in America was, slavery and then emancipation by kind of kind white people. And then Martin Luther King's beautiful speech about colorblindness. And then the ghetto, like the ghettos, that's how I grew up thinking about what Black life has been like in America. And there was this sense I had of without the help of white people, Black folks have this innate tendency towards poverty and initiative, or they lack initiative, right? And I really believe this is because they didn't have some kind of connection to the kind of good white Christian work ethic that I thought I had, and my peers had. But Black people have been experiencing, ever since emancipation, through white racial terror and legislation and politics, white people have been very, very concerted about trying to fend off the possibility of Black people becoming full citizens in America, especially economically. What has this done, right? We jump to today and we think about the fact that, you know, Black people have been segregated from housing, right? They've been segregated in education. They've been segregated in banking even, right? Access to certain kinds of loans and things like that, and savings accounts. These have all created risk factors that have now created huge amounts of risk for Black people during COVID, right? So they're less likely to go get tested. They're less likely to go to the hospital because they know the bills will come in and they can't pay them.
Exactly.
They bear the higher burden of chronic disease more than white people. And now COVID has exploited all of this, right? So this whole history of slavery, the efforts of white people to fend off integration of Black people into American life, and now COVID, these are all linked together, I think, through the history of Black people's access or lack thereof to wealth. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about all these problems kind of together at the same time in the middle of a COVID pandemic.
Yeah, it's crazy how it brought everything together. You can see it in a different perspective now.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So I'll move on to my next question, which is, how do you think we can fight off wealth disparity at like a local level, national, or and international level?
Yeah, this is a big question. Yeah, and locally, nationally, internationally, I mean, there's a lot that could be said for all three of those. A couple things I would say. One of the most basic things, and I wouldn't want this to be taken in a as if it's just like a casual throwaway suggestion. My first idea was actually starting reading groups. I say that because well, one, we're in COVID. We're all locked inside for the most part, right? So we have time to do these things. But also, you'd be surprised, like the history of a lot of radical movements in America that have brought about huge reforms, even revolutions, both here in America and internationally, have been started through book clubs, book groups, with working people working hard hours during the day and then getting together in solidarity at night to read and try to figure out where are we and how do we get out of this situation. You know, picking up a biography, you know, of maybe a favorite politician, right, that's fought for reform for inequality. Maybe it's a revolutionary, right, that has fought off, you know, dictatorships in Latin America, right, that were, you know, in cahoots with American powers. You know, take your pick, but there's a host of resources here that I think young people are especially hungry for, and we have the time to do it. And now that we have Zoom to coordinate us all, we can do that. So just, don't forget that's been a powerful resource for people who want to affect change.
Yeah, it's great that you say that because me and my mom actually just recently started a social justice book club with some of my peers, and it's great. We just finished reading Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
Yeah,
it's a great book, and it actually plays into what we're talking about, some of what we're talking about, how poverty plays into the incarceration of many people, many young people.
And you make a great point too, Sophia. I mean, like, I think people like us, you know, that are just now keenly aware of how different sorts of oppression and inequality all intersect. I mean, works, books, articles, you know, that try to tackle oppression and inequality from multiple angles, not just economic, but racial, gendered, right, colonial violence, things like this. Analyses like that, I think, are really important because, again, COVID has only shown us that in a crisis like this, you lift the rug up, as it were, and you see underneath that there are just a number of interconnected and long historical oppressions and violences in American life that are just totally knotted together, right? And so, finding books that help you sort of unknot those things and analyze them and think about them as related is, I think, really important. think other things that are worth thinking about, I mean, this is a simple thing, but I've been really impressed with it recently, is just like the importance of talking to neighbors about struggles. So I mean, like, you'd be surprised to learn, you know, that your next door neighbor, for instance, is a month away from eviction if you actually go out and talk to people, right? Or is on food stamps, or is facing down a huge medical bill like I recently was. And I think it's important because these kind of conversations, especially if you're in kind of a middle class area, you know, of, you know, I'm in Berkeley, right? So kind of other metropolitan areas where, you know, these conversations can help us push back against our tendency to want to believe everyone around us is just doing okay. We're actually a little bit afraid to find out that somebody's suffering. It's not maybe close to home for us, or it's not familiar. But I think making ourselves have those kind of conversations is important for awakening our sense of urgency around the kinds of local injustices, right? I mean, local injustices aren't just things you discover in books and newspapers. I mean, they are literally in the bodies and souls of people around you.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of thing can be a gateway, right, to really thinking about where the needs are. And again, you can't really address injustice around you without knowing the people who are affected by it. So I don't want to underplay that at all. I think on a bigger scale, then starting to work towards alternatives, there's this term that activists and organizers use called mutual aid, right? Mutual aid is an important thing, I think, for our generation to think about, because it's focused on ways of building power and community protection without the interference of bosses and landlords and the government, right? So in our day and age, it's not sufficient, right? But it's a really important tool for thinking outside of those categories of power and domination. So, you know, bail funds, right? Heard a lot about those with Black Lives Matter's protests and imprisonment, grassroots legal and eviction defense, disaster response, food distribution. There are just so many examples that can be found ongoing, many likely in our cities and neighborhoods, right? They're again devoted to thinking about a different kind of world, right?
Yeah.
Theorists call this prefigurative politics. Don't let that word scare you. It basically means thinking about the kind of future we want to have and realizing it somehow here in the present, right? And so these ways of thinking about how to be together, take care of each other, pay for each other, without being under the thumb of somebody who wants to dominate us. That's a really important thing for us to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the last thing I would say before I'll just talk about movements, because that's an important last part. I mean, finding out about, I think, local and state politicians that are involved in fighting for working people and their families is really important. It can be really hard to do, to engage with local politicians because they just don't necessarily have the kind of money and media spotlight that career politicians do. In some cases, they have to spend a lot of money just on trying to fight against like bad press and stuff, right? That's happened here in Berkeley quite a bit. Some of our most progressive politicians in Berkeley and Richmond, their opponents spent more money trying to smear them than actually talking about their platform, right?
Yeah.
But these are really important things. I mean, in some sense, real progressive change, radical reforms, even revolutions come about through the bottom up, right? So who are those people that are actually tuned into the voices of their next door neighbors and their neighborhood councils and city councils? Those are important people to work on supporting.
My next question is, how do you think people who are religious, and specifically you as a Christian, how do you think they are working to close the gap in wealth disparity?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say working for the Institute for Christian Socialism has been wonderful for me because it's introduced me to a set of people that do care about this issue quite a bit, right? And I think, again, my background has been among Christians who largely do not care about these things, or at least their faith has ways of rationalizing egregious forms of inequality and domination and oppression. So there is good work being done, and I think the best work is often done not through Christians trying to say we have an angle on justice, or we have you know, kind of an exclusive perspective on this, that if people would just see things our way, things would change. It's Christians who, because of their faith convictions, go out and start working with and building power with other people that are trying to take care of the poor, trying to realize a better future. I'll say this. I think the single most important thing I can say is actually negative, which is that, you know, you should be very, very suspicious of religious people, and especially, you know, white Christians, that those are my people, who say that religion and politics are completely separate, you know, or that religion is not political, or that politics just kind of falls neatly into place after you figure out your relationship with God, right?
Yeah.
Christianity and religion are always political. The early church, the Christian church understood this. Slave abolitionists understood this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, crusaders and Southern Christian slave owners also understood this very well. So there's always a political environment in which religious people are going to minister and to think about their faith and try to actualize their goals of serving and supporting and caring for the oppressed. You know, I'll say that, like, especially Christians in America are very good about talking about the importance of caring for the poor, the widow, the oppressed, the imprisoned, but they often think about this in very individualistic ways, right? So they love to talk about serving the oppressed as individuals. They're not all that happy to talk about addressing the systems that create that oppression in the first place.
Right.
And again, that's speaking primarily from my community. I don't know if you've experienced this problem too. Yeah, I think again, especially white Christians in America, we love the idea of being above the fray of politics and conflict, so much so that we become invested in never upsetting the status quo, rather than like telling ourselves, hey, justice might just require doing the right thing, and that means taking a side. And taking sides does oftentimes incur conflict. You end up making enemies, which the Bible talks a whole lot about. In fact, it says things like, if you don't have enemies, you should worry about, you know, the quality of your faith. So yeah, I just think it speaks volumes about your social privilege to say something like, I don't think faith and politics mix, or God doesn't want us to stir up division by talking about inequality, when millions of people do face inequality and racism and bigotry as a regular part of life and have no choice but to figure out how to survive in the face of that kind of oppression. So yeah, I think that the single most important thing here in our religious communities, as we work towards trying to address that inequality, if we do indeed care about that, is to try to change our mindset from trying to, I would say, you know, persuade the minds of the wealthy and powerful few. That will hardly ever do anything to actually create durable, large-scale change, right? We have to have understanding that ending the oppression that's caused by the wealthy and powerful few requires taking a side, being on the side of workers, the oppressed, the voiceless, and building movements and coalitions of real power. And again, that will make us uncomfortable, you know, like our faith convictions drive us. But if we want to actually build justice for the whole world, we can't ask people to subordinate themselves to our convictions, right? That's a hard thing for a lot of religious people to internalize. So those are a few things I could say.
Last question that I have, which is, me and my generation are looking forward to hopefully inheriting a better future. How do you think we can get there?
Wow. Yes.
You know, so
I trust you more than me at this point. There's already a significant age gap, and I mean that quite seriously. I trust my own kids and their friends and people like yourself more than me already, because I've seen the incredible amount of agency and intuition for what radical change involves, you know. I'm thinking about some of the climate change protests that I've been to with my kids and my wife, and just the impressive number of younger kids there that weren't just, you know, dragging their feet behind their parents, but were at the front of the lines. There's some of these signs, like their analysis was like, that's way better than any climate change activists or socialists would ever tell you, you know. I think if I were to give some advice to people who are going to change the world, you know, like yourself and your peers, I mean, I think the first thing is like a really blunt recognition that the world your parents grew up in, and perhaps the world you were promised, as I was, no longer exists. this has been something that I've had to learn the really hard way. You know, again,
Yeah.
given my background, right? You're not just promised salvation in the afterlife, but in a sense, you're almost promised clean, white, safe, white suburbia. And you know, living in California, experiencing like all these fires, and confronting the fact that these fires, short of radical action, are just a new part of what life looks like to live in California. We're already, in a sense, seeing migrations, right, out of certain states because of climate change, fires, suffocating conditions, right? All that brought about by climate change that is already marking the world in ways that are irreversible. So I think it's important for people, because my generation and our politicians and our leaders want to talk about how little that matters, right? Or that we can change things. Not, you know, nothing's irreversible. Some things are truly irreversible at this point, right? It has to be confronted. So like, if you have a good analysis of what can and can't change, you know what you have, the work you have to do, right? Second, you do have to believe that the world can, in fact, still be different, right? You know, one thing our generation grew up with is there's no alternative, right? Kind of, you know, the pinnacle of capitalist civilization, right? This is just the way things are. Nothing will ever change. Get used to it. No, in fact, like, you have to believe the world still can be different because it's changed radically over and over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
I think of one of my favorite anarchist authors who said something like, you know, people who say, you know, capitalism will never go away. Well, like, people used to believe in feudalism and the divine right of kings, and that did change, right? Humans can set their minds to many, many things and bring about radical change. And we just know it's been done, right? So you shouldn't be told that it can't be done. I think, like, the third thing, the last thing I would say is, again, understanding that the power to effect change has to be built from the ground up, right? So I think everyone can see by now, certainly your generation can, our major political parties and leaders are not coming to our rescue, right? Both on the left and the right, in the mainstream, whether we're talking the parties or not, you know, they live in fear of us in some ways. They live in fear that, you know, great masses of people, working class people, will be disaffected, will rise up and try to divest them of their power, divest them of money, to make a better world, right? So again, having an awareness that, like, these are the forces you're stacked against. These people are not coming to help you. However, real power can be built from the ground up with you and your peers. Yeah, I think that's got to be the analysis to have when you're going to confront climate change, racism, an undemocratic economy, things like that. Yeah, that's kind of how I would encourage you. But again, I think all this has to happen in your book groups with your peers and in the organizing that you do. You have much to teach us, as much as we can, you know, provide advice to you.
Yeah, well, thank you. That definitely gave me a greater perspective on wealth disparity and more, just everything we talked about. Great.
Good. You've had some great questions. These were hard questions. Quite a bit, so I appreciate it, and I hope where this gets used, right, I hope it's actually just the beginning of conversations that can begin to happen, small town and beyond. So I really appreciate the forum to do it.
This next song we're gonna jump into right here is called Black Dreams. This is off a project called The Black Tape, and you can find this on the blackexcellenceband.com. So let's vibe out. Buy your mama a house, black dreams just to get up off the couch, black dreams graduate and get a job, we just trying to beat the odds, black dreams we just want to make it out. Listen, black dreams just to see 21, black dreams be a father to your son, black dreams don't be out here on the run, you ain't gotta tote a gun, black dreams we just want to have fun. Listen, now black dreams, we just want equal rights. Black dreams, get some freedom in this life. Black dreams, we just trying to get ahead. Treated like Americans. Black dreams, we just want to make bread. Listen, now black dreams, don't get caught up on that block. Black dreams, you ain't gotta sell rocks. Black dreams, don't get locked into a cage, put into an early grave. Black dreams, don't get murdered by a cop. Listen, black dreams from black kings and black queens. And when it's reality, we'll never lack things. I'm talking building us up, creating black green. So when they say we acting black, we know what that means. That's black stocks, black shops, black crops. That's black owned, black homes, black blocks. That's black shares, black chairs, black care. Embracing all of your blackness, start with your black hair. Your black hips, your black lips, your black kiss. That black love from black skin, that's black rich. Your black health, your black wealth, that's black bliss. Where you don't never lose that pride in your black fist. Look, I got black dreams to win many awards. Black dreams take my people on tour. Black dreams that I can be that man with strength to withstand all the pain that my people will endure and open doors. If I can be the one to do what's not done. Though these times are heavy, my spirit can lift tons. Black dreams turn reality now. I know it's real when my brother's not a casualty. Salary chasing, so calories racing. Dealing with this pain in many ways. Tell me, how do we face it? Black dreams, don't die young, keep living. You got a purpose to burden, though it is heavy. I'm telling you that it's worth it. Black dreams that'll make my people proud of me. I do it for the ones I love and those who doubt in me. These black scenes of black beings for black means. Living in your purpose now, that's what I call a black dream. Black dreams, black dreams, black dreams. Black dreams, black dreams, black dreams. Black dreams, black dreams, black dreams.